Tonight, you are going to live through one of the most famous nights in all of human history. You will not read about it. You will not watch it from a distance. Tonight, you are going to be there to walk the streets, to breathe the air, to stand among the people of the greatest city the world has ever known, on the last ordinary night it would ever have. For this is Rome, and the date is the 18th of July, in the year 64. By the time the sun rises again, this city will have begun to change forever. Because somewhere in Rome tonight, in a row of little wooden shops down by the great racing track they call the Circus Maximus, a small fire has just begun to burn. Right now, it is nothing, a glow, a few hungry flames licking at dry timber in the dark. No one has raised the alarm. No one is afraid. In a city built of wood and packed with 1 million souls, small fires come and go, and this one looks no different from 100 others. But this fire is different. This is the fire that history will remember. Before it burns itself out, days from now, it will have swept across this city like a living thing. And the Rome that exists tonight, this exact city, these exact streets, will be gone forever. And here is the strange and quiet truth of it. Almost no one in Rome knows, not yet. All around you, 1 million people are living an ordinary evening. They are eating supper. They are putting their children to bed. They are laughing, arguing, falling in love, drifting off to sleep with no idea that this is the night everything changes. The baker is preparing his dough for a morning that will never come as he expects. A family is sharing a meal they will remember if they live for the rest of their lives. Children are sleeping softly who will wake to a different world. Only you know what is coming. So as you move through this city tonight, you will carry a quiet secret in your heart. You will see the small fire grow, far off, hour by hour, while the people around you live on, unknowing. And there is a strange tenderness in that, to walk among them on their last ordinary night, and to wish them well, and to let them have their peace a little longer. But understand this, before we begin, there is nothing here for you to fear. You are not truly in danger. You are only a traveler, a quiet visitor, drifting through a night that ended almost 2,000 years ago. The fire cannot touch you. The people you will meet are long since gone, their story long since told. You are here only to witness, and to wander, and to let this ancient world rise up around you and carry you gently down into sleep. So let the modern world fall away now, the hum of it, the glow of the screen, the weight of your day. Let it all grow quiet. Breathe slowly. Let your eyes grow heavy. And when you open them again, in your mind, you are standing on a low hill beneath a warm and darkening summer sky. Below you, spread across her 7 hills, glittering with 10,000 lamps in the gathering dusk, lies the eternal city. Rome, she does not know. She is beautiful and busy and alive. And she does not know what this night will bring. The evening air is soft and warm. The sky above is deepening from gold to amber to the first deep blue of night. And from where you stand, you can see it all: the temples on the heights, the crowded valleys, the silver thread of the river. And there, Far to the south, down in the valley of the Circus Maximus, a single faint point of orange light, so small you might almost miss it, glowing against the dusk. You take a slow breath of the warm evening air, and then, unhurried, with all the time in the world, you begin to walk down toward the city, toward the lamplight and the people, and the long, unforgettable night ahead. The path down from the hill is worn smooth by generations of feet. As you descend, the sounds of the city rise to meet you, faint at first, then fuller. The distant murmur of 100,000 voices, the bark of a dog somewhere in the dark, the creak of a cart's wooden wheels on stone, and underneath it all, constant and gentle, the soft trickle and splash of running water. For Rome is a city of fountains, fed by great aqueducts that march across the countryside for miles. You reach the bottom of the hill, and the city folds itself around you. The street here is narrower than you expected, and the great apartment buildings rise on either side, 4 and 5 stories tall, their upper floors leaning so close together that they nearly touch above your head, leaving only a ribbon of deep blue sky between them. These are the insulae, the islands, where most of Rome's people live. Their walls are painted in faded reds and yellows, warm even in the fading light. Lamplight spills from open windows and doorways. Somewhere above you, a mother calls her children in for the night. Somewhere else, someone is singing softly, a tune you don't know, in a language that is old even here. The air is warm and close, thick with the smells of the day bread and olive oil, smoke and dust, and the green scent of herbs growing in clay pots on windowsills. A cat watches you from a doorway with calm, ancient eyes, then slips away into the shadows. No one pays you any mind. They cannot see you. You are just a quiet shape, moving through the warm Roman dusk, a traveler from another time, walking gently among them on the last ordinary night their city will ever know. And so you walk on, deeper into Rome, carrying your quiet secret, as the small fire glows on in the distance, and the city settles in, all unknowing, toward the dark. The first thing you come to understand as you move through these streets is that Rome never truly falls silent. By day, the city is a roar, but the daylight hours have laws of their own. For most of the day, wheeled carts are forbidden inside the city walls, banished by old decree to keep the narrow streets clear for the rivers of people who fill them from dawn until dusk. And so it is only now, as night settles in, that the great wagons are finally permitted to enter. All through the hours of darkness, Rome is fed. Carts heavy with grain, with wine, with oil, with timber, and everything a million mouths and hands could need come rolling in through the gates and groaning down the lanes. The sound of them is the sound of the Roman night, the slow grind of wooden wheels on stone, the patient clop of oxen, the low murmured calls of the drivers guiding their beasts through the dark. You step aside to let one pass. The driver, a weathered man with a small lamp swinging from his cart, gives you a slow nod without a word, and the wagon rumbles by, stacked high with amphorae, those tall clay jars that carry the lifeblood of Roman trade. The smell of wine drifts after it, sweet and sharp on the warm air, and then it is gone, swallowed by the shadows, and the quiet settles back around you like a blanket. The street bends and opens, and without quite meaning to, you find yourself stepping out into a small crossroads where 4 lanes meet. And here, even at this late hour, there is life. For this is the hour when Rome, having finished its work, comes out to live. On the corner, beneath a striped awning rolled half away for the night, there is a small shop with a wide stone counter facing the street. Set into the counter are great round clay pots, sunk down deep, and from them rises a curl of steam and the rich, dark smell of food kept warm over coals. This is a thermopolium, the place where ordinary Romans, who have no kitchens of their own in their cramped upper rooms, come to buy a hot meal at the end of the day. Tonight, there is a stew of beans and barley flavored with herbs. There are olives glistening in oil. There is bread and hard yellow cheese and rough wine sold by the cup. A handful of men lean against the counter, eating slowly, talking in low voices. One of them laughs, a real laugh, warm and tired, the laugh of a man at the end of a long day. The shopkeeper, an older woman with strong arms and a cloth over one shoulder, ladles stew into a clay bowl for a boy who has been sent down to fetch supper for his family. She adds an extra spoonful when she thinks no one is looking. The boy carries it away carefully with both hands, watching the surface so it will not spill, and disappears up a dark stairway between the buildings. You stand a moment in the warm glow of the shop's single hanging lamp, and you breathe it in the steam, the herbs, the wine, the smoke. There is something deeply peaceful in it. These are not emperors or senators or famous names from history. These are simply people, at the end of a day, sharing a meal in the dark. And the sound of their quiet talk, in a language 2,000 years old, washes over you like the murmur of distant water. You move on, unhurried, and the lanes grow narrower, the tall apartment blocks pressing close on either side. From down here, looking up, the 1,000 little windows glow softly gold in the deepening blue. Each one a small life, a small warmth, a small story you will never know. Washing hangs on lines strung between the buildings, drifting faintly in the warm air. Somewhere above you, a baby cries and is gathered up and soothed and falls quiet again. You pass a public fountain set into a wall, a simple thing, water spilling endlessly from a worn stone spout into a basin below, where it has spilled, day and night, for longer than anyone living can remember. A woman has come down with a tall jar to fill it for the morning. She balances it on her hip with the ease of long habit, and nods to a neighbor who has come for the same, and the two of them stand a while in the cool by the water, talking softly of small things, a sick child getting better, the price of bread. The water sings its endless quiet song beside them. But the night is moving on, and so are you. As you wander, you notice the small rhythms of a city putting itself to bed. A shopkeeper draws a heavy wooden shutter across his storefront and bars it for the night. A man on a stool outside his door finishes the last of his wine, stretches, and goes inside. The cookshops begin, one by one, to bank their fires and put out their lamps. The streets, so full of life an hour ago, are slowly emptying, not all at once, but gently, the way a tide goes out. You come at last to a wider street, paved with great flat stones, worn smooth and faintly shining in the light of the rising moon. And here you pause and look up and let yourself simply be still in the heart of this ancient city. Above the rooftops, the sky has gone fully dark, a deep, soft, velvet blue, scattered with more stars than you have ever seen, for there are no other lights in this world to drown them out. The moon is rising, full and pale and gentle, washing the marble and tile and stone in soft silver. And the great city breathes slowly all around you. 1,000,000 people, settling, quieting, drifting one by one towards sleep. It is, you think, the most peaceful thing you have ever felt. And far away, across the rooftops, down toward the great hollow of the Circus Maximus where the chariots race by day, you notice almost without noticing the faintest warm glow against the night sky. Just a soft point of orange light, small and distant, no brighter than a single lamp seen from across a valley. You do not think much of it. A cook fire, perhaps, the ordinary warmth of an ordinary Roman night. You let your gaze drift back to the silver moon and the soft stars and the quiet street beneath your feet, and you walk on, gently, into the sleeping city. Of all the things that surprise a visitor to Rome, perhaps the strangest is this. In a city of 1,000,000 souls, almost no one cooks at home. It seems impossible at first, but think of where these people live. Look up, once more, at the great apartment blocks rising around you, the insulae, 5, 6, sometimes 7 stories of brick and timber climbing toward the stars. An open flame in a building like that, packed with families and furniture and dry wooden beams, is a danger almost beyond imagining. And so the law and simple good sense keep most cooking fires out of the upper floors entirely. The people of Rome eat at the cookshops in the street, or they carry home a pot of something warm, or they make do with bread and cheese and olives and cold things that need no flame. The smell of 1,000 suppers that drifts through these lanes at dusk comes not from 1,000 kitchens, but from the shops below. And the great public ovens, and the small braziers of those wealthy enough to risk them. It is the kind of small, strange fact that makes a vanished world suddenly real. These were not so different from you. They came home tired. They were hungry. And they, too, found their quiet ways to be warm and fed at the end of a long day. Come, let us step inside one of these buildings, just for a moment, and see how a Roman family passes the evening. The doorway is low, and beyond it a narrow wooden stair climbs steeply into the dark. You would not climb it, but in your mind, gently, you drift upward, past the closed doors of sleeping neighbors, past the smell of lamp oil and old wood, until you come to a small room on the 3rd floor, where a single clay lamp burns low and golden. Here lives a man named Lucius. He is no one famous history will never write his name. He is a worker in the great warehouses by the river, where the grain of Egypt is unloaded to feed the city. His hands are rough, his back aches from the day, and right now he is sitting on a low wooden stool, eating a bowl of bean stew that his wife carried up warm from the shop below. His wife Marcia sits near the window, mending a tunic by the last of the light, and in the corner, on a narrow bed, their 2 children are already asleep, curled together like puppies, their breathing soft and even. Lucius eats slowly. He is too tired to talk much, but every now and then he glances at his sleeping children, and something in his weathered face softens. Tomorrow he will rise before dawn and walk down to the river, and the work will be hard. But tonight, in this small warm room, with food in his belly and his family safe around him, he is, in his quiet way, content. You could watch them for hours, this small, ordinary, peaceful scene, repeated in 10,000 windows across the sleeping city. But let them rest. Let us drift back down, gently, into the street. And as you go, let me tell you a small thing about this city that the people here all know, though they rarely speak of it. Long ago, so long ago, that even to these Romans it is ancient history, there were two brothers, Romulus and Remus, abandoned as infants and left to die by a river. But a she-wolf found them, the story goes, and instead of devouring them, she nursed them as her own, and they lived. And when they were grown, Romulus founded a city on these 7 hills and gave it his name, Rome. Whether it is true, no one can say, but every Roman child knows the tale, and somewhere in this city stands a bronze statue of that wolf, with the 2 small children beneath her, a reminder that even the greatest city in the world began as something small and lost, and in need of shelter in the dark. It is a fitting story for a night like this, a story about being kept safe through the darkness until the dawn. You walk on, and the lanes wind quietly before you. Here and there, life still stirs in the gentle dark. Through one window, you hear the low murmur of a mother singing her child to sleep, a soft, wordless tune, older than the city itself. Through another, the click and scrape of someone washing the last bowl of the evening. A night watchman passes you, a lantern in his hand and a heavy staff over his shoulder, walking his slow rounds through the streets. He gives you a nod, and the small flame of his lantern bobs away into the dark, growing smaller and smaller until it vanishes around a corner. The city is settling now, sinking deeper toward sleep. The wagons still rumble faintly in the distance, bringing in their grain and wine. But even they seem slower now, gentler, as though the whole world were winding down toward rest. And far away you notice it again. Almost without meaning, to that faint, warm glow still flickers against the southern sky, down toward the Circus Maximus. A little brighter now, perhaps, than it was before. Or perhaps that is only your imagination, only a trick of the deepening dark. The people of Rome do not see it. They are asleep, or nearly so, wrapped in the warm, ordinary peace of an ordinary night. They do not know it is there. And tonight, they need not know. Tonight, there is only the soft dark, and the singing of a distant mother, and the slow breathing of a city at rest. You let the thought drift away, like smoke on the warm night air, and you walk on, deeper still, beneath the silver moon. The streets begin to widen now, and the humble brick of the apartment blocks gives way, little by little, to something grander. The paving stones grow broader beneath your feet. Columns rise out of the dark on either side. And then, quite suddenly, the buildings fall away entirely, and you step out into a great open space, silver-washed beneath the moon, the very heart of Rome, and perhaps of the whole world. This is the Forum. By day, this is the busiest place on earth. Tens of thousands of people pass through it between dawn and dusk. Senators in their white togas, merchants and moneylenders, lawyers arguing cases, priests, soldiers, beggars, foreigners from every corner of the empire, speaking 100 tongues. By day, the noise here is a wall of sound. But now, in the deep of night, the Forum is empty and still, and it belongs only to the moon and the stars and you. Take your time here. There is no hurry. Let your eyes wander across the silvered stone. All around you rise the great buildings of the Roman state. There are the temples, their tall columns glowing pale in the moonlight, their bronze doors shut for the night. There is the Senate House, where the most powerful men in the world gather to argue and decide the fate of nation. There are the speakers' platforms, worn smooth by centuries of orators, the triumphal arches, carved with scenes of victory, the golden milestone from which all the roads of the empire are measured, so that it is truly said, all roads lead to Rome, and they lead, in the end, to this very spot. And here is a thing worth knowing, as you stand in the quiet. The Romans believed that the very center of their city, the navel of the world, was marked here in the Forum by a small, deep pit, covered over with stone. They called it the Mundus. They believed it was a doorway, a place where the world of the living touched the world of the dead, and only 3 times a year was it opened, with great ceremony and care. The rest of the year it stayed sealed, and the Romans walked over it, going about their business, buying and selling and arguing and laughing. With the doorway to the underworld quiet beneath their feet, they lived, as we all do, with mystery just below the surface of ordinary life. And mostly, they did not think of it at all. A sound draws your attention, soft footsteps on stone. Across the Forum, a lone figure moves slowly between the columns. He is an old priest, white-haired, wrapped in a fold of his robe against the cool of the night. He carries a small lamp, and he is making his way, unhurried, toward one of the temples, to tend a sacred flame that must never, by ancient law, be allowed to go out. You watch him climb the temple steps, one by one, slow and careful, and disappear between the great columns into the dark within. A moment later, deep inside, a soft glow brightens. He has fed the holy fire, as priests have done in this same spot, night after night, for longer than anyone can remember. Some say the flame has burned, unbroken, for 600 years. There is something in that thought that settles over you like a calm hand. 600 years of someone, every single night, climbing those steps in the dark to keep a small fire alive. Empires rise and fall. Emperors are born and die, but the quiet, faithful work goes on, a flame tended, a child sung to sleep, a lamp lit against the dark. It is the small and constant things, you think, that truly hold the world together. The old priest emerges again, his task complete, and makes his slow way back across the Forum, his little lamp bobbing gently, until he too is swallowed by the night, and the great square is yours once more. You walk out into the center of it, and you stop, and you turn slowly, taking it all in: the temples, the columns, the silent Senate house, the silver moon hanging vast and gentle above it all. To stand here, alone, in the dead of night, in the still and silver heart of the greatest empire the world has ever known. It is a kind of peace that is difficult to put into words. The weight of all that history, all those lives, all that striving and glory, and yet, right now, in this moment, only stillness, only the soft wind moving between ancient stones, only the moon and the quiet and you, and far away, beyond the southern edge of the forum, past the temples and the rooftops, that faint warm glow still rests against the night sky, a little wider now, perhaps, a soft and distant amber down toward the great circus. It does not trouble you. It is only a light in the dark, like so many others in this city of a million lamps. The forum sleeps, the priest sleeps, Rome sleeps, and the gentle glow keeps its quiet watch on the horizon, far away, harming no one. As the night drifts slowly on, you breathe in the cool night air, deep and slow, and you turn and wander on, beneath the watching stars. You linger a while longer in the great square, and as you do, your eyes are drawn upward, again and again, to the temples that ring the forum and crown the hills above it. For Rome is a city that lives and breathes with its gods, and nowhere is this more plain than here, in the deep of night, when the temples stand silver and silent beneath the moon. The Romans had gods for everything, great gods, whose names you may know: Jupiter, king of them all, lord of the sky and the thunderbolt, whose vast temple crowns the Capitoline hill above you; Mars, the god of war, father of the Roman people; Venus, goddess of love and beauty; Neptune of the sea; Minerva of wisdom. But there were smaller gods, too countless thousands of them, woven into every corner of daily life. There was a god of doorways, who faced both ways at once, looking to the future and the past, and we remember him still, for we named a month after him, January. There was a goddess of the hearth fire, and gods of the storehouse, and spirits of the crossroads, and the quiet household gods that every family kept in a little shrine and honored each day with a few words and a pinch of offering. To be a Roman was to live in a world that was crowded, always with the unseen. A world where the gods walked close and had to be thanked and asked and kept content. Before a journey, before a marriage, before a battle or a business deal or the planting of a field, a Roman would pause and make an offering and look for signs. And here is a thing that may surprise you. The Romans read the future in the strangest of ways. There were priests whose entire sacred duty was to watch the flight of birds across the sky, and to know, from the direction and the manner of their flying, whether the gods smiled or frowned upon a venture. There were others who would examine the livers of sacrificed animals, searching their shape and color for messages from the divine. No great decision of the Roman state, no war declared, no temple built, no emperor crowned was made without first consulting the will of the gods in these ancient ways. The most powerful empire the world had ever seen turned, in part, on the flight of birds across a morning sky. Let your eyes rest now on one temple in particular, a smaller, rounder one, glowing softly from within. This is the temple of Vesta, goddess of the hearth, and within it burns that sacred flame you saw the old priest tend, the eternal fire of Rome, which by ancient law must never be allowed to go out, for the Romans believed that if it died, the city itself would fall. It is tended day and night, year upon year, by the Vestal Virgin's 6 priestesses, chosen as young girls, who give 30 years of their lives to the service of the flame. They are among the most honored and most powerful women in all of Rome. They have the finest seats at every spectacle. Their word can pardon a condemned man. If a prisoner being led to execution so much as crosses the path of a Vestal, and she declares the meeting accidental, his life is spared. Such is the power the Romans give to those who keep the sacred fire burning. There is a strange and fitting poetry in that, on a night like this. A city that worships fire as a sacred and life-giving thing, that builds it a temple and guards it for centuries, and believes its own survival depends upon a flame that never dies. And tonight, far to the south, another fire is waking, a fire that no priestess tends, a fire that no one has yet thought to fear. You step out from the shadow of the temples and turn your eyes, almost without meaning to, toward the southern sky. The glow above the Circus Maximus has not gone away. If anything, though, it is hard to be sure. Across the rooftops and the dark it seems a touch brighter than it was. A soft and steady smudge of warm light, low on the horizon, beneath the cold and brilliant stars. The temples of the gods stand silent all around you. The eternal flame burns on in its sacred house. And far away, the other fire, the unwatched one, glows quietly in the dark, biding its time. You breathe in the cool night air, scented faintly now with distant smoke, and you walk on, beneath the silent watching temples, deeper into the sleeping city. As you move on through the quiet streets, you pass a different kind of building, low and strong and orderly, its doorway lit by a single torch, a place that hums faintly even now with a discipline that never fully sleeps. This is a barracks, one of many in the city. For Rome, above all things, was built and held together by her soldiers. It is easy, on a peaceful night like this, to forget what stands behind the calm. But the truth is that the whole of this vast city, the whole of the empire that feeds it, rests upon the shoulders of the Roman army, the most formidable fighting force the ancient world had ever seen. From the cold forests of Germany to the deserts of the East, from the green hills of Britain to the banks of the Nile, the legions stood guard and held the frontiers, and kept the peace that let 1,000,000 people sleep soundly in their beds tonight. Here is a thing worth knowing as you stand in the torchlight. What made the Roman soldier so feared was not strength or fury or numbers. It was discipline. The Roman legionary trained relentlessly, marched in perfect order, and fought not as a wild mob but as a single machine of shields and short swords, each man trusting the man beside him with his life. They could build a fortified camp, with ditch and rampart and ordered rows of tents, every single night on the march, and tear it down again at dawn. They carried, each man, not only his weapons and armor but his tools, his rations, his share of the camp, a weight that would stagger most men today, and they marched mile after mile under it, day after day, without complaint. To be a Roman soldier was to be remade, body and soul, into part of something vast and relentless and enduring. In the barracks doorway, a single soldier stands the night watch. He is young, perhaps 19, perhaps 20, far from the province where he was born, with years of service still ahead of him before he can retire to the small plot of land that is the dream of every legionary. He leans on his spear, watching the empty street, his mind drifting, as a young man's will on a quiet night, to home, to a girl, to the taste of his mother's cooking in a village he may never see again. He has given his youth to Rome. In return, Rome has given him a place in the greatest enterprise the world has ever known. And if he lives, a citizenship and a pension at the end of it. There is a story the soldiers tell, passed down through the legions of the discipline that made them what they were. It is said that once, long ago, a great general's own son, eager and brave, broke ranks without orders to fight an enemy champion, and won, and came back in triumph with the spoils. And his father, the general, had him put to death, not for cowardice, for the opposite, for breaking the discipline on which every soldier's life depended. Whether the tale is true or not, the soldiers tell it still, and it tells you something true about Rome, that here the order of the whole stood above the glory of any one man. It was a hard creed, but it built an empire that would last 1,000 years. You leave the young soldier to his watch and his dreams of home, and you walk on into the dark, and as you go, you find yourself thinking of all the soldiers out there in the night, far beyond the city, tens of thousands of them, standing watch this very hour on distant frontiers, beneath strange stars, so that Rome might sleep. Most of them will never see this city they serve. Many will die in lands whose names mean nothing to the people here. And yet, because of them, the wagons roll in safely with their grain, the markets fill, the children sleep. The peace of this warm Roman night was bought, and is held by men in the cold dark far away. You glance once more toward the south. The glow above the circus is steady and patient against the sky, a little broader perhaps than when you last looked, and it strikes you with a strange, quiet weight that against some enemies even the legions are powerless. Rome's soldiers could conquer the world, but no army that ever marched could hold back the fire that is waking even now in the warm and rising wind. You breathe the cool night air, and you walk on deeper into the sleeping city. Of all the gifts that Rome gave to the people who lived within her walls, perhaps none was loved so well or so deeply as the baths. You come upon them now, drawn by the warmth that seems to seep from the very stones, a great building, vast and domed, its high windows glowing softly from the lamps within. Even at this late hour, the baths are not quite empty. For a Roman, the bath is not merely a place to wash. It is the heart of the day's pleasure, a place to soak, to talk, to think, to be still. Rich and poor alike come here, for the price of entry is the smallest of coins, and within these walls, for a little while, the hard divisions of the world soften and blur in the rising steam. Step inside, in your mind, and feel the air change. The first thing is the warmth, a deep, enveloping, comforting warmth that wraps around you the moment you pass through the doors. Then the sound, the gentle lap and echo of water, the low murmur of voices made soft by the vast domed ceilings, the distant trickle of fountains, and the light golden, hazy, filtered through curling steam so that everything seems to glow and waver gently like a half-remembered dream. The Romans built these places to move through slowly, room by room, warmer and warmer. There is the changing room, where you leave the cares of the day folded with your clothes. There is the warm room, where the heated floor for the Romans, cleverly, ran hot air through hollow spaces beneath the tiles, warms the soles of your feet and loosens every tired muscle. And there is the hot room, thick with steam, where the bathers sit in blissful silence, their eyes half closed, the heat drawing the weariness from their bones. Here is a small thing worth knowing as the steam drifts around you. The Romans had no soap, not as you would know it. Instead, they rubbed their skin with fine oil, and then, with a curved bronze tool called a strigil, they gently scraped it away, and with it, the dust and sweat of the day. It sounds strange, perhaps, but imagine it. The warm oil, the slow and careful scraping, the deep heat all around. It was, by all accounts, one of the most relaxing things a person could do. After a long day's labor, a Roman would emerge from the baths, loose-limbed and easy, glowing, calm, and ready for sleep. In the warm room, on a stone bench worn smooth by countless bodies, an old man sits alone, his eyes closed, a faint smile on his face. He is no one important. He spent his life as a baker, rising in the black hours before dawn, year after year, to fill the neighborhood with the smell of warm bread. His hands are scarred from the ovens, his back bent from the work. But here, now, in the warmth and the steam, all of that falls away. He comes every night, when the crowds have thinned, to sit in the quiet and let the heat soothe his old bones. This is his peace. This is his reward. And watching him, you feel something of that peace settle into you too. You linger a while in the warmth, letting the soft sounds and the golden haze wrap around you. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do, only the warmth and the water and the quiet. And then, when you are ready, you drift on out through the cool room, where a last plunge in cooler water would close the ritual, and out, at last, into the night air, which feels soft and kind against your warmed skin. The street outside is quiet now. The hour has grown late. And as you stand a moment beneath the stars, breathing the cool night air, you notice almost without thinking that the breeze has shifted. It is a warm breeze now, warmer than before, coming up from the south. And on it, very faintly, there is a new smell beneath the familiar ones of the city. The smell of wood smoke a little stronger, perhaps, than a quiet summer night should carry. You glance toward the south, toward the great hollow of the Circus Maximus, and the glow that has rested there all evening, that faint and distant amber, seems just a little broader now against the sky. A little warmer. It casts the faintest blush on the underside of the clouds, but the night is calm. No alarm has sounded. No voice is raised. The baker dozes in his warmth behind you. the city sleeps all around. Whatever that distant glow may be, it is far away, and the night is deep, and you are warm and at peace. And so you let the thought drift gently off into the dark, and you wander on, unhurried, beneath the slowly turning stars. As you leave the baths behind, you find yourself thinking of the water, all that warm water, all that endless flow in the heart of a city of 1,000,000 people, and it leads you to wonder, where does it all come from? The answer is one of the great wonders of the ancient world, and it runs, quite literally, all around you, mostly unseen. Follow a quiet street to the edge of the city in your mind and look up. There, marching across the darkened countryside toward Rome, striding on great arches that stalk across the valleys like a procession of giants, comes one of the aqueducts. There are many of them. 11 great aqueducts will eventually serve the city, and together they carry water into Rome from springs and lakes in the distant hills, some of them from more than 50 miles away. And here is the wonder of it. The water moves entirely on its own. There are no pumps, no engines, nothing but the patient genius of Roman engineering. The aqueducts are built to fall, ever so gently, along their whole enormous length, dropping just a few inches for every 100 paces. So slight you would never see it with your eye, but enough that the water flows mile after mile after mile, down from the mountains, across the plains, over the valleys on their high stone arches, and at last into the heart of the city. It is a thing of such precision that engineers would marvel at it 2,000 years later. And the Romans built it without any of the tools we would think it required, by hand, by eye, by sheer accumulated skill, slaves and engineers and surveyors laboring for years to keep that perfect, invisible, life-giving slope. Into the city, the water comes, and it never stops. Day and night, year upon year, hundreds of millions of gallons flow into Rome, enough that every citizen, even the poorest, has more clean water available than many people would have in cities nearly 2,000 years later. It feeds the great baths. It feeds the 1,000 public fountains where the people draw their daily water. It feeds the latrines and flushes the great sewers and spills endlessly day and night. The soft music you have heard in every quiet street tonight. The Romans were so proud of their water that one of the men who managed it wrote with magnificent scorn, comparing his useful aqueducts to the idol pyramids of Egypt and the famous monuments of the Greeks. For what good, he asked, was a beautiful, useless thing beside water that gave life to 1,000,000 people? And the water is only the beginning of it. Look around you as you walk at the city the Romans built. Look at the great arches, the soaring vaults, the domes and bridges and towering walls. The Romans were the master builders of the ancient world, and their secret, one of them was a material that would be half forgotten for 1,000 years after their fall, and is still in use, in a sense, in every city on earth today: concrete. The Romans made a concrete so strong and so clever that some of it has stood for 2,000 years. Concrete that could even set underwater, allowing them to build harbors and bridges where no one had built before. With it, and with their tireless armies of workers, they reshaped the world. They drove their famous roads in straight, stubborn lines across mountains and marshes, From the heart of Rome to the edges of the known earth, more than 50,000 miles of paved road, so well made that some of it carries footsteps even today. All roads, they said, lead to Rome, and they had built with their own hands the roads to prove it. There is something humbling in it, on a night like this, to stand among the works of these long-vanished people and to feel the sheer reach of their ambition. They built as though they would last forever. The arches striding across the hills, the water singing in every street, the roads running to the ends of the earth, all of it made to endure, to defy time itself. And yet, for all their genius, for all their concrete and their arches and their tireless skill, there was one ancient enemy the Romans could never quite defeat, one thing that no aqueduct could drown and no wall could hold back: fire. In a city built so tall, so crowded, so full of timber and oil and close-packed wooden floors, fire was the shadow that lay always at the edge of Roman life. They fought it as best they could with their night watchmen, their bucket chains, their laws about building. But they never truly conquered it. And tonight, as you stand among the magnificent stone works of the greatest builders the world had yet known, that ancient enemy is awake again, far to the south, gathering its strength in the warm and rising wind. You glance toward it, that soft amber glow above the southern rooftops, steady and patient in the dark. The aqueducts stride silently across the hills behind you, carrying their endless rivers of water into the sleeping city. So much water, so much genius, and still the fire grows. You breathe the cool night air, and you walk on, deeper into the wonders of the ancient city. Your wandering carries you, now, toward the south, and though you do not quite decide to go there, your feet seem to find the way, drawn gently through the darkened streets toward the great valley that lies between the Palatine and Aventine hills. And then the buildings fall away, and you come out into the open, and there before you, vast and silent in the moonlight, lies the largest structure ever built for the pleasure of a crowd, the Circus Maximus. It is breathtaking, even empty, even in the dark. Imagine a valley, a third of a mile long, shaped into a great elongated arena, ringed about with tiers of seats rising up and up into the night. By day, when the chariots race, 250,000 Romans pack these stands, 250,000 voices roaring as one, a sound like the sea, like thunder, like the end of the world. There is no crowd like it anywhere on earth. Rich and poor sit together here, emperor and beggar united in the madness of the race, screaming for their favorite teams, the Reds, the Whites, the Blues, the Greens, with a passion that could spill over into riots, into bloodshed, into love affairs and ruined fortunes and lifelong loyalties. But now, in the deep of the night, the great arena is empty and still. The tiers of seats climb away into the darkness. The long central spine of the track, where stand the gilded monuments and the great Egyptian obelisk brought across the sea from a temple older than Rome itself, throws long shadows in the moonlight. The starting gates are dark and quiet. The sand of the track, raked and ready, lies pale and undisturbed beneath the stars. Here is a thing worth knowing as you stand in this immense and silent place. The chariot races of Rome were more dangerous and more glorious than almost anything we have today. The charioteers, many of them slaves, Some of them risen from nothing could become the richest and most famous men in the empire. The greatest of them all, a Spaniard named Diocles, won thousands of races over his long career and earned a fortune so vast it would make him, by some reckonings, among the wealthiest athletes in all of history, ancient or modern. They drove at a furious gallop, 4 horses abreast, around the tight and deadly turns where a single mistake could shatter a chariot to splinters and drag a man to his death behind his own horses. The crowd loved them. The crowd mourned them. And the next day, the crowd came back for more. But it is not the racing that draws your eye tonight. For here, at the eastern end of the great circus, where the open arches of the stands shelter row upon row of little wooden shops, shops selling food and wine and trinkets to the racing crowds, shops crammed with cloth and oil and dry goods and all the small flammable stuff of daily trade. Here, tonight, in the warm and windy dark, this is where it began. You can see it now. You are close, now closer than you have been all night. Among the shadowed arches, down at the far end, there is a flickering, a restless orange light dancing against the stone. A few thin threads of smoke, rising and curling away on the warm south wind. It is small still. A knot of figures has gathered nearby. You can just make them out, dark shapes against the glow, moving with the first stirrings of urgency, beating at the flames, shouting to one another, calling for water. Perhaps they will master it. Perhaps, even now, it can still be stopped. But the wind is rising, and the shops are old and dry and packed together. And the flames are reaching now from one wooden roof to the next with a soft and hungry crackle that you can almost hear across the empty arena. You stand at the edge of the great silent circus, and you watch the small fire flickering in the distant arches, the fire that history will remember, taking its first breaths in the warm Roman night. There is no fear in you, for you are only a traveler, and you know how this old story ends. But there is a kind of hush, a kind of held breath, in standing so near to the beginning of something so vast. The warm wind stirs the sand of the empty track. The moon rides high and silver above the darkened stands, and down in the shadowed arches, the small fire grows and reaches and begins slowly to spread. You turn away at last and walk back into the sleeping streets. There is more of Rome to see tonight, while still it stands, and the fire, you know, will find its own way through the dark. Your wandering brings you, in time, down toward the river the Tiber, the great brown artery that has fed and shaped this city since before it had a name. By day, its banks are a churning chaos of commerce. By night, it moves dark and slow and patient beneath the moon, carrying the reflected stars upon its back. This is where Rome is fed. All along the riverbank stretch the great warehouses, the Horia, vast storehouses piled high with the wealth of an empire, grain from Egypt, oil from Spain, wine from Gaul, marble and spices and cloth from the farthest edges of the known world. Here is a thing that is hard to truly grasp. Standing in the quiet dark, this single city of 1 million people ate so much grain that whole provinces existed mainly to grow it. A great fleet of ships crossed the sea each year, again and again, for one purpose above all others, to keep Rome fed. And it nearly always worked. The bread was baked, the people ate, and the vast and intricate machine of the city rolled on, mostly unnoticed by those it kept alive. Tonight, the wharves are quieter, but not still. A few barges are being unloaded by lamplight, men moving sacks in a slow and steady rhythm, their shadows long and strange against the warehouse walls. The river laps gently at the wooden piers. Somewhere, a watchman calls a soft, sing-song, "All is well" to another, far down the bank, and the answer drifts back across the water. Near the riverbank, by a row of shuttered market stalls, a young woman sits on a low step, a shawl around her shoulders. Her name is Vibia, and she sells flowers and herbs by day, violets and roses, bay and rosemary, sold to those going to the temples, or to lovers, or to those who simply wish for something sweet-smelling in a crowded city. Her stall is closed now, her baskets empty, the day's work done. She is waiting for her husband, a bargeman, whose boat is due in tonight with the tide. And so she sits, in no hurry, watching the dark river and the silver moon, humming softly to herself. You might sit a while near her, in the quiet, and share the simple peace of waiting by a river at night. But as you sit, you begin to notice it. Slowly. The way you might notice a change in the weather long before you can name it. The breeze off the river has shifted again and strengthened, and it is warm, too warm, somehow, for the deep of night. And on it, the smell of smoke is clearer now, not the friendly smoke of a cook fire or a lamp, but something larger, drier, with an edge to it. Vibia notices it too. You see her lift her head and pause in her humming and turn to look toward the south, where the dark bulk of the Aventine and Palatine hills rises against the sky. And there, above the rooftops, the glow is no longer faint. It has grown. Where before there was a soft point of amber, now there is a wider band of warm and restless light, flickering gently against the underside of the clouds, painting them in shades of rose and gold. It is still far away. It is still, from here, almost beautiful, like a second, smaller sunset, glowing low along the southern sky. But it is larger than it was, and it is no longer quite so easy to call it nothing. Vibia watches it for a long moment. Then a neighbor, an older man who keeps the stall beside hers, comes out from where he has been dozing, drawn by the same warm wind. The two of them stand together, looking south, talking low. There is no fear in their voices yet. Fires are not so very rare in Rome, in a city of timber and tight-packed houses. Small fires come and go, and are fought and are forgotten. The man says something, and shrugs, and Vibia nods. Probably it is nothing. Probably the watchmen and the bucket brigades are already at their work, as they so often are. And by morning it will be only a story, a patch of blackened timber, a thing that happened somewhere else to someone else. Probably, but the wind is warm, and the smell of smoke drifts steady on the air, and the glow along the southern sky flickers and breathes like something alive. You sit a while longer by the river, in the strange warm hush of it. The water still laps gently at the piers. The moon still rides high and silver overhead, serene, indifferent. And the city sleeps on, mostly 1,000,000 souls in their beds, dreaming their small dreams, not yet knowing that this night will be remembered for as long as the story of Rome is told. Vibia gathers her shawl a little closer and turns her eyes back to the river, watching for her husband's boat. The old man returns to his doze, and the warm wind blows, and the distant fire glows, and the long night moves, slowly and inevitably toward whatever it is becoming. You rise, at last, and turn from the river, and you walk on, gently, not away from the glow, and not toward it, but through the quiet, sleeping streets, as the south wind carries its warm breath of smoke across the rooftops of Rome. Stay a while longer by the river, and let your mind travel down its slow brown current south and west, some 15 miles, to where the Tiber at last meets the sea. For there, at the river's mouth, lies the great port of Ostia, the gateway through which the whole world flows into Rome. You cannot walk there tonight, not truly, but let your thoughts drift downstream, the way the barges drift, and imagine it the harbor town that never sleeps, the place where the wealth of an empire is gathered and sent on to feed the hungry city upstream. Even now, in the deep of night, Ostia is awake. For the sea does not keep human hours, and neither do those who live by it. By the light of 100 torches and lamps, great ships ride at anchor in the harbor, merchant vessels from every corner of the known world, their holds heavy with the cargo that keeps Rome alive. There are the huge grain ships from Egypt, broad-bellied and slow, that cross the open sea each season laden with the wheat that bakes Rome's daily bread. There are ships from Spain heavy with olive oil, from Gaul with wine, from Africa with wild beasts for the games, from the distant East with silk and spice and perfume and things so rare that ordinary Romans know them only as rumors. Here is a thing worth knowing as you picture that torchlit harbor. The sea trade of Rome was one of the wonders of the ancient world, and one of its great gambles, too. For the Mediterranean in summer was a highway, busy with hundreds of ships, but the sea is never truly tamed. Storms could rise without warning and send a whole season's grain to the bottom. Pirates had once made the waters deadly, until Rome, in her might, swept them from the sea. And so every loaf of bread in Rome was, in a way, a small miracle of human daring grown in Egypt, carried across open water by men who wagered their lives on wind and weather, unloaded at Ostia, and sent at last upriver to the tables of 1,000,000 people who never thought, as they ate, of the long and dangerous road their bread had traveled. On the docks of Ostia, by the light of a swinging lamp, a ship's captain stands watching his cargo come ashore. He is a weathered man, brown and creased by sun and salt, who has crossed the great sea more times than he can count. Tonight his ship has come in safe again, heavy with Egyptian grain, and tomorrow it will be carried upriver to the city. He is tired and glad, in the bone-deep way of a man who has brought his ship and his crew home whole through the dark water one more time. He thinks, perhaps, of the storm he outran off Sicily, of the men he has known who did not come home, of the small house and the family waiting for him not far from these docks. The sea has given him his living and very nearly taken his life more than once. But tonight the water is calm, the cargo is safe, and he is home. You leave him there, on his torchlit dock, and let your thoughts drift back upriver, following the grain toward the sleeping city. And as your mind returns to the streets of Rome, you carry with you a new sense of the vast and intricate web that holds this city alive. The ships and the sailors, the ports and the warehouses, the roads and the rivers, all of it reaching out across the whole known world and drawing its riches home to this one place. No city had ever been so large, or so hungry, or so dependent on the labor of so many distant hands. Rome was the heart of the world, and like a heart, it drew everything inward to itself, and could not live a week without the steady flow. The warm south wind is still blowing as your thoughts return to the city streets, and on it, that smell of smoke, steady and insistent now. Away to the south, the glow has spread wider still against the sky. The ships ride safe at anchor in Ostia, 15 miles away. But here, in the heart of the city they feed, the fire is climbing through the dark, and no ship or sea or distant harbor can do anything to stop it now. You breathe the warm and smoky air, and you walk on, through the sleeping streets of Rome. Away from the river now, the streets draw you back into the heart of the living city, and you discover that Rome, even at this late hour, even on this of all nights, has not entirely gone to sleep. For there is a whole world that wakes when the sun goes down. The respectable citizens may be abed, but the Roman night belongs to others, to the workers and the wanderers, the drinkers and the dreamers, the keepers of small fires against the dark. You pass. First, a tavern, a popina. The Romans called it its doorway glowing warm and golden, spilling lamplight and low laughter out into the street. Inside, in the haze of smoke and the smell of cheap wine, a handful of men and women sit at worn tables, playing at dice, talking, laughing softly. These are the night people of Rome, a couple of off-duty soldiers, a sailor far from home, a pair of laborers who will sleep a few short hours before the dawn. The Romans loved games of chance, and though gambling was, in theory, against the law for most of the year, the dice rattled on regardless in 1,000 taverns like this one, every night, across the city. A man throws and groans, and his friends roar with laughter, and someone calls for another cup of wine. It is warm in there, and easy, and human, and you might stand a while in the doorway and simply let the comfortable sound of it wash over you. Out in the streets again, the night watch passes the vigiles. Rome's watchmen and firefighters, 7,000 strong, organized into companies that patrol the darkened city through every hour of the night. They walk in small groups, carrying lamps and buckets, axes and long poles and rough blankets soaked in vinegar for beating out flames. For fire was the great terror of Rome, the nightmare that haunted every crowded street, and these men were the city's defense against it. They watched for the first curl of smoke, the first glow in a window, and when they found it, they fought it, tearing down buildings to make fire breaks, passing water hand to hand, doing desperate battle in the dark. Tonight, you know, they are losing that battle, far to the south. Even now, companies of them will be racing toward the circus, toward the spreading flames, to do what they can. But here, in the quiet northern streets, a small group passes calmly on its rounds, lamps bobbing, not yet knowing how long and terrible this night will become. One of them, a young man, glances up at the smoke-tinged sky to the south and frowns and says something to his companions. They pause a moment, looking, then they walk on. They have seen fires before. You pass other figures in the dark, each with a story you can only guess at. A baker, his day beginning when others have ended, lighting the fires of his ovens in a basement room, the warm smell of the first dough already rising, preparing the bread that Rome will eat tomorrow, though tomorrow will be nothing like he imagines. A pair of lovers, lingering in a shadowed doorway, murmuring their goodbyes. A lone philosopher, or perhaps just a sleepless old man sitting on a step beneath a lamp, reading from a scroll by its flickering light. A litter passing by, carried on the shoulders of slaves, its wealthy occupant hidden behind drawn curtains, going home from some long dinner party on the other side of the city. For the Romans, you remember, loved their dinner parties, the cena, the great social ritual of the evening, where the wealthy reclined on couches and ate and drank and talked for hours into the night. Here is a thing that may surprise you. At a grand Roman feast, the guests lay down to eat, propped on their left elbows on broad couches set around a low table, reaching for the food with their right hands. To sit upright to eat was considered rather common, and the food itself could be extraordinary. Not just the simple bread and stew of the poor, but, in the houses of the rich, dish after elaborate dish, roasted songbirds, oysters carried live from the coast, honeyed dormice, fruits and sauces and spiced wines, served sometimes through the entire night. Some feasts became legendary for their excess. And all the while, musicians played, and poets recited, and the lamps burned low, and the wine flowed on. But even the grandest feast must end. And as you walk, you see the parties breaking up at last, the guests departing into the night, the slaves beginning the long work of clearing away. One by one, the great houses dim their lamps. One by one, the taverns close their doors. The dice fall silent. The lovers part. The city, at last, even its night people, begins to surrender to sleep. And over it all, steady and warm and growing, the south wind blows, and the smell of smoke is on it now, no longer faint, drifting through every street, so that here and there a sleeper stirs, and half wakes, and wonders, and sinks back down into dreams. You lift your eyes once more to the south, and this time there is no mistaking it. The glow has spread along the horizon, a long, low band of restless orange light, brighter than the moon now, pulsing and breathing against the dark, throwing up vast, slow columns of smoke that drift across the stars. The fire is no longer a rumor, no longer a distant point of light. It has become a presence in the night, vast and patient and growing, and the whole southern sky is lit with the soft amber glow of it. But where you walk, it is still quiet, still gentle. And so you walk on through the last of the Roman night, as the great city dreams its final dreams, and the fire draws slowly nearer through the dark. As you wander the quiet streets, let your mind turn for a while to the small things, the ordinary textures of a Roman life. For it is in the small things, often, that a vanished world feels most real and most close. Think first of time itself, and how strangely the Romans kept it. They had no clocks as you would know them, no ticking hands, no glowing numbers in the dark. They divided the daylight into 12 hours and the night into 12 more, but because the days grow long in summer and short in winter, their hours stretched and shrank with the seasons. A daytime hour in summer might be half again as long as one in winter. To a Roman, the idea of a fixed, unchanging hour, the same all year round, would have seemed strange and unnatural. They lived by the sun and the light and the slow turning of the seasons in a way that we, with our exact and tireless clocks, have almost entirely forgotten. Tonight, the Romans would say, has its own 12 hours long summer hours, deep and warm and slow. Think of how they dressed. The men in their tunics, simple and practical, and over them, for citizens, on formal days, the famous toga, that great heavy drape of white wool, yards and yards of it, wound and folded about the body in a precise and complicated way that required help to put on and great care to wear. It was hot and heavy and impractical, and the Romans were rather proud of all that. The women in their long flowing gowns, the stola with shawls and fine jewelry for those who could afford it, earrings and necklaces of gold and pearl and emerald, and elaborate hairstyles piled high and held with pins, tended by skilled slaves for hours at a time. Think of the strange and the familiar mixed together in their daily lives. They had no buttons and fastened their clothes with pins and brooches. They had no paper as we know it, and wrote on scrolls of papyrus or on thin wooden tablets coated with wax, scratching their letters with a pointed stylus and smoothing the wax flat again to write anew. They had no forks, and ate mostly with their fingers and with spoons, reclining at their meals. And they had no idea, none at all, of so much that we take for granted. No soap, no clocks, no glass in most windows, no notion of the germs that carry disease. And that brings us to medicine. For here, perhaps more than anywhere, the Roman world was a strange mixture of brilliance and darkness. The Romans had skilled surgeons, especially among their armies, who could set broken bones, stitch terrible wounds, even perform delicate operations on the eyes with bronze instruments so well designed that some would scarcely change for over 1,000 years. They understood the value of clean water, of drainage, of fresh air and exercise, and good diet. In some ways, their care of the body was remarkably wise, but they lived, too, in a world without any true understanding of disease, a world where illness might be blamed on bad air, or angry gods, or curses, and where the line between medicine and magic was blurred and faint. A Roman doctor might prescribe a sensible diet and rest, and then, in the same breath, an amulet to ward off evil, or a strange remedy of herbs and spells and the ground-up parts of animals. They wore charms against sickness. They visited temples of the healing god and slept the night within them, hoping the god would send a dream to cure them or show the way. They lived, as people did for most of history, at the mercy of plagues and fevers they could not understand, and they faced it with a mixture of hard, practical sense and deep, abiding superstition. It makes you grateful, perhaps, lying safe and warm in your own time. But it makes you tender toward them too, for they did their best, these people, with the knowledge they had. They loved their children and feared for them through every fever. They sought out healers and wore their charms and prayed to their gods and hoped as people in every age have hoped for one more morning, one more season, one more year of life. They were, in the end, so very much like us. Frightened and brave, foolish and wise, fragile and enduring, making their way as best they could through a world they only half understood. A woman passes you now in the dark, hurrying, a small bundle clutched to her chest, perhaps medicine for a sick child at home, fetched from some night-working apothecary, perhaps a charm, or a remedy, or simply bread. She does not see you. She hurries on, her face tight with the small private worry that has worn the faces of mothers in every age of the world, and disappears around a corner, into the dark, into her own story that you will never know. And above it all, the warm wind blows from the south, and the smell of smoke grows slowly stronger, and the glow on the horizon deepens. The small things of a Roman life, the toga and the tunic, the wax tablet and the healing charm, the long, slow summer hours, all of it going on, tonight, for one last ordinary night beneath the gathering shadow of the fire. You pull your thoughts gently back from the small things and walk on through the warm and smoky dark. Not all of Rome sleeps in marble and quiet gardens. Let the streets carry you now, into a different world, down into the valley between the hills, into the beating, crowded, restless heart of the common city, the Subura. This is where the real Rome lives, not the Rome of senators and temples and triumphal arches, but the Rome of the ordinary million, the workers, the shopkeepers, the porters and weavers and water carriers, the vast tide of humanity that made the great city run. It is the most crowded place in the most crowded city on earth, and even now, deep in the night, it does not fully rest. The Subura never truly sleeps. The lanes here are narrow and winding, twisting between the towering insulae that crowd so close their upper floors nearly shut out the sky. By day, this place is an ocean of noise and smell and motion. But even now, in the dark, life murmurs all around you. A lamp burns in an upper window where someone cannot sleep. A baby wails somewhere high above and is hushed. Two voices rise in a brief, tired argument and fall quiet again. A rat slips along the gutter. From an open doorway comes the smell of cooking and cheap wine, and too many people living too close together in the summer heat. Here is a thing worth knowing about these great apartment blocks as you pass beneath them in the dark. For all their height, they were often dangerously, frighteningly fragile, built quickly and cheaply and far too tall. By landlords hungry for rent, the insulae of Rome had a grim habit of collapsing, simply falling down, sometimes without warning, burying whole families in rubble, and when they did not collapse, they burned. The upper floors, where the poorest lived, were the deadliest of all. Highest from the street, farthest from escape, built of the cheapest timber, lit by the open flames of oil lamps. To live at the top of a Roman apartment block was to live always quietly, with danger overhead and underfoot. The poor of Rome knew the fear of fire in their bones. They had seen it before. They would see it again. And yet, and this is the thing that stays with you, they lived. They truly lived. For all its dangers and its squalor, the Subura was bursting with life. It was famous for it. Its people were quick-tongued and sharp-witted, loud and warm and resilient. Great men were born here in these crowded lanes and never forgot it. Even Julius Caesar himself, the story goes, lived here in the Subura in his younger years, among the noise and the crowds, before he rose to remake the world. Down a narrow side lane, a small lamp still burns above a doorway, and beneath it, an old woman sits on a low stool, unable to sleep in the heat, watching the quiet street. She has lived in this same building, on the ground floor, for all her long life. She has seen the neighborhood change 100 times, seen families come and go, seen buildings rise and fall and burn and rise again, seen children she once knew grow old as she has grown old. She has buried a husband and raised her children and watched them scatter across the city and beyond. And now she sits, in the warm dark, with her memories, watching over the street the way she has always done. As you pass, she seems almost to sense something. She lifts her head and looks for a moment right where you stand. Then she smiles a small, private smile at nothing, at the night, and turns her eyes back to the quiet lane. You leave her there, the keeper of her small corner of the eternal city. And as you move on through the winding lanes, you become aware again of the smell of smoke, stronger here, somehow funneled and held by the close-packed buildings. The people of the Subura know that smell better than anyone. And here and there, now, you see them stirring. A man standing in a doorway, looking south, his face troubled. A small group gathered at a corner, talking low and fast, glancing toward the glow that paints the sky beyond the rooftops. Word is beginning to spread through the crowded warrens of the poor that the fire to the south is not a small one, that it is growing, that it is, perhaps, coming this way. There is no panic yet. The Subura has seen fires before and survived them. But there is a new wakefulness in the air, a tightening, a held breath. Mothers gather sleeping children a little closer. Men pull on their tunics and step out into the lanes to look. The old woman on her stool watches the southern sky, and her face is calm, but her hands are still. You move on through it all, the unseen traveler, carrying your quiet foreknowledge like a stone in your heart. For you know what these people only fear. You know what the night will bring to these crowded, fragile, teeming streets. And there is nothing to do but wish them well, and walk on gently, and let them have their last hours of the world they know. Above you, the moon rides on, veiled now and then by the drifting smoke, and the Subura murmurs and stirs around you, alive, defiant, afraid, and beautiful on the last night of the Rome it knew. Leave the river now, and let the streets carry you gently upward, for Rome is a city of hills, and the higher you climb, the further you rise above the crowded, smoky world of the common people, into the cool and quiet air where the great and powerful make their homes. The narrow lanes fall away behind you. The towering apartment blocks give way to high garden walls, to grand doorways flanked by columns, to the silent, spreading houses of the rich. Here, on the slopes of the Palatine and the Caelian, live the senators and the generals, the old families whose names fill the histories, the merchants grown wealthy beyond counting. Their homes are not stacked one atop another, but spread wide and low behind their walls, built around open courtyards where fountains play and the night air is sweet with the scent of flowers. From the street, you can see almost nothing of them, only the high walls, the barred gates, the tops of cypress trees black against the stars. But here and there, through a gateway left open, you catch a glimpse of another world. A courtyard paved in colored marble, a pool of still water mirroring the moon, a covered walkway painted with scenes of gardens and gods, lit softly by hanging lamps. It is worth knowing, as you climb, just how vast the distance was between these two Romes. The man in his tiny room beneath the tiles and the senator in his marble house drank the same water, walked the same streets, watched the same moon, and yet they lived in worlds so far apart they could scarcely imagine one another. The rich Roman might own 1,000 slaves, vast estates across the sea, more wealth than entire kingdoms. The poor Roman owned little more than the clothes he wore and the bowl he ate from. And yet, in the warm dark of a summer night, both lay down to sleep beneath the same stars in the same great city, equally small beneath the turning sky. In one of these great houses, the gate stands a little open, and within, a single figure sits awake. He is an old senator named Gaius, and he cannot sleep. He sits in his courtyard, by his quiet pool, wrapped in a fine wool cloak, a cup of watered wine forgotten at his side. He has seen much in his long life, emperors come and gone, fortunes made and lost, the slow turning of the great wheel of Roman power. Tonight his thoughts are far away, drifting over the years, the way an old man's thoughts will do in the small hours when sleep will not come. He watches the moonlight on the water, and he remembers. And then, like everyone else in Rome this night, he lifts his head, for he too has caught the change in the air. From up here, on the height of the hill, the view to the south is wide and clear, and what was, down by the river, a band of restless light along the horizon is, from here, something more. You can see it now for what it is, a great and growing glow spread along the valley of the Circus Maximus. Far below and away, a long line of fire, flickering and rolling, throwing up a vast soft column of smoke that catches the moonlight and the firelight together and glows, strange and beautiful and terrible, against the night. Gaius rises slowly to his feet and stands at the edge of his courtyard, looking south. He has lived in this city all his life. He knows what fire means in Rome. He has seen it before. But there is something in the size of this, in the steady, spreading breadth of it, that holds him still and silent. He does not call out. He does not wake his household. He simply stands, an old man alone in his garden, watching the distant fire paint the sky, and thinking thoughts that you cannot hear. Perhaps he is thinking of the people down there, in the crowded valleys where the flames are. Perhaps he is thinking of his own long life, and how small even the greatest of men becomes against a thing like this. Or perhaps he is simply watching, the way one watches the sea, or a storm caught by the terrible beauty of something vast and beyond all human control. You leave him there, with his thoughts and his quiet pool and the firelight in his old eyes. And as you move back down through the sleeping streets, you feel the night has changed around you. The warm wind is steadier now, carrying the smell of smoke through every lane. Here and there, a window that was dark is now lit. Here and there, a figure stands in a doorway, looking south, murmuring to a neighbor. Not panic, not yet, just a slow, spreading wakefulness. A city beginning, here and there, to stir and wonder. A dog barks somewhere and will not stop. Far off, you think you hear, for the first time, the faint sound of voices raised not in fear, but in the calling back and forth of men beginning to gather, to fetch water, to do what Romans have always done when the fire comes. But where you walk, it is still quiet, still gentle, still wrapped in the deep, soft dark of the summer night. The fire is far away, across the valley, beyond the river of rooftops. It cannot reach you here. And so you walk on, slowly, through the stirring city, beneath the smoke-veiled moon, as Rome begins, ever so slowly, to wake to the long night ahead. High on the Palatine Hill, the hill that gives us the very word palace, there stands a house unlike any other in Rome. It is the home of the most powerful man in the world. And tonight, as the fire grows in the valley below, we may, just for a moment, climb to its gates and consider the strange and glittering figure who lives within. His name is Nero. He is young, not yet 30, and he has ruled the Roman world for 10 years. He became emperor as a teenager, the last of the line of Augustus, raised to the highest power on earth before he was old enough to truly understand it. And he is, by any measure, one of the strangest men ever to hold that power. For Nero does not dream, as other emperors did, of conquest and war. Nero dreams of art. He fancies himself a singer, a poet, a charioteer, a performer, and he longs, more than anything, for the love and applause of the crowd. He will, in time, scandalize all of Rome by appearing on the public stage himself, singing and playing the lyre before thousands, something no emperor had ever stooped to do. To the old Roman nobility, it is unthinkable, shameful. To Nero, it is glory. Step closer, in your mind, to the palace gates and glimpse the world he lives in. Beyond the walls lie gardens and courtyards, fountains and colonnades, halls of marble and gold. Nero's wealth is beyond imagining. His whims are law across an empire that stretches from the cold rivers of Britain to the burning sands of Egypt. He can have anything, command anyone, reshape the world to suit his dreams. And yet, by all accounts, he is restless and fearful, and never satisfied, haunted by plots, real and imagined, surrounded by flatterers, trusting no one, forever chasing an applause that never quite fills the emptiness within. Here is a thing that history will long remember about this night, though whether it is true, no one can ever truly say. In the years after the fire, a story would spread and grow and harden into legend that the Emperor Nero, as Rome burned, stood upon a high tower or a palace roof and, moved by the terrible grandeur of the flames, took up his lyre and sang of the fall of ancient Troy. Nero fiddled while Rome burned. The phrase would echo down 2,000 years, the very image of a heartless ruler reveling in his people's ruin. but the truth is almost certainly otherwise. The historians who lived nearest to that time tell us that Nero was not even in Rome when the fire began. He was away at the coast, at Antium, the town of his birth, and he hurried back to the city when he heard. They tell us he opened his own gardens and public buildings to shelter the homeless, that he arranged for food to be brought in, that he organized the fight against the flames. The cruel legend of the singing emperor may have been just that, a legend, born of how much his enemies and history came to hate him. For Nero's reign would end in blood and ruin a few years from this night, and the victors who wrote his story had little reason to be kind. We will never know the truth of it. And perhaps that is fitting, for that is how it so often is, with the powerful and the famous. The real person vanishes, and only the legend remains, growing stranger and larger with each passing century, until the man himself is lost behind it. But turn now from the palace and look out over the city as the emperor himself might have looked on this very night. From this height, the view is vast, the whole of Rome spread out below, the 7 hills, the silver river, the countless lamps, the dark mass of 1,000,000 sleeping souls. It is the greatest city the world has ever built, the capital of an empire without equal, the work of 700 years of striving and glory. And it is burning. From up here, there is no mistaking it now. To the south, the Circus Valley is a lake of fire, glowing fierce and orange in the dark, and the flames are spreading, reaching north and west, building by building, street by street, driven on the rising wind. The great columns of smoke blot out whole fields of stars. The glow lights the undersides of the clouds for miles. Whatever Nero is doing tonight, singing or weeping or desperately commanding his men, he, like you, can surely see it. The heart of his empire, the eternal city itself, beginning to burn. You stand a while at the edge of the palace hill, the emperor's city spread before you, the fire glowing in the dark. And then, quietly, you turn away for the powerful, and their palaces are not, in the end, the true story of this night. The true story is down there, in the streets, among the ordinary people whose ordinary world is about to change forever. And so you leave the emperor to his tower, and his legend, and his burning city. And you descend once more into the streets below, as the long night deepens toward its terrible and beautiful climax. The hours have passed now, soft and slow, and you have wandered far through the sleeping city. But all the while, in the south, the fire you watched take its first breaths among the wooden shops of the circus has been growing. It did not stay small. The men who gathered to fight it could not master it, for the wind was rising, and the shops were dry, and the flames leapt from roof to roof faster than any line of men could pass their buckets of water. By the time the alarm spread in earnest, the fire had grown beyond the power of any to stop it, and now it has found the wind in full and begun to move through the city like a living thing. But you need not be afraid, even now, for you are only a traveler here, drifting gently through a night that ended 2,000 years ago. The people of that night are long since gone, their joys and their sorrows folded quietly into the deep earth of history. What you are watching now is not a thing to fear, but a thing to witness one of the great moments of the ancient world, unfolding slowly far below you in the warm and smoky dark. There is a moment, on a night like this, that comes to a great city all at once, and yet to each person within it, alone. It is the moment of knowing. For hours, the fire was someone else's trouble, a glow in the south, a rumor in the street, a thing happening over there to other people, in another quarter, the kind of thing that happens and is fought and is over by morning. All through the night, the people of Rome told themselves this, as people always do, because it is easier and because it is usually true. They rolled over in their beds. They told their children it was nothing. They watched the glow from their windows and decided it was far enough away. But slowly, house by house, street by street, heart by heart, the knowing came. It came to the woman who opened her shutters for a breath of air and found the night sky glowing orange from edge to edge. It came to the man who stepped outside to look and felt the heat of it on his face, though the flames were streets away. It came to the family who heard, for the first time, that low and growing roar beneath the wind, the sound a great fire makes, a sound no one who hears it ever forgets. It came to the mother who saw her neighbors running, and to the old man who smelled the smoke change, and to the child who asked, in a small and frightened voice, why the night was so bright. One by one, and then in their thousands, and then in their hundreds of thousands, the people of Rome came to understand the same terrible thing at last, that this was not an ordinary fire, that it was not going to stop, that the city itself, the eternal city, the center of the world, the only home they had ever known, was burning, and would keep on burning, and that nothing anyone could do would hold it back. It is a quiet thing, that knowing, even in the midst of so much noise, a stillness that opens in the chest, a moment when the mind, which has been telling itself comfortable stories all night long, finally goes silent and simply accepts what the eyes have been trying to say. You can see it pass across the city like a slow wave in the dark windows, lighting one after another, doors opening, voices calling, the whole vast sleeping organism of Rome stirring awake into the same shared, dawning horror. And then, having known it, the people of Rome did what people do. They rose. They gathered their children and their old ones. They picked up what they could carry, and they left the rest, and they went out into the streets to save what could be saved, or simply to live. 1,000,000 separate stories, 1,000,000 small acts of love and fear and courage, all set in motion in the same dark hour by the same terrible knowing. So let yourself drift up once more to that low hill where you first stood at the beginning of the evening, where you first looked down upon the glittering city in the golden dusk. Stand there again now, in the deep of the night, and look down upon Rome. It is a sight that no one who saw it ever forgot. The fire has spread along the valley, and it moves now like a living thing, a great slow river of light flowing through the darkened city. Where there were streets, there are now ribbons of flame. Where there were homes, there are now towers of gold and orange, rising and falling, throwing great showers of sparks up into the night, like swarms of burning stars. The smoke rolls upward in vast, soft columns, underlit by the glow, and spreads across the sky until it veils the moon itself, so that the whole world seems wrapped in a strange and shifting amber light. It is terrible, and it is, in its way, unbearably beautiful, the kind of beauty that makes you go quiet inside, the way you might before a great storm at sea, or a mountain wreathed in cloud. For there is something in a great fire that speaks to the oldest part of us, something that holds us still and silent and watching, caught between awe and sorrow. Down in the city, the Romans are awake now, all of them. You can see them if you look, tiny figures far below, moving through the streets that are not yet burning. Some are fleeing, carrying what they can, children on their shoulders, a treasured thing clutched to the chest. Some are fighting the fire, as Romans always did, forming long chains to pass buckets of water from the fountains, tearing down houses in the fire's path to starve it of fuel. Some simply stand, as the old senator stood, as you stand now, watching the great light consume the heart of their world. There is a story told of this night. Whether it is true, no one can truly say, for the historians themselves disagree, and the tale grew in the telling over the long years. It is said that while Rome burned, the Emperor Nero looked out upon the flames and, moved by the terrible grandeur of the sight, took up his lyre and sang of the burning of ancient Troy long ago. Some say he watched from a high tower, some say it never happened at all, that it was a slander invented by his enemies. We will never know. But the story has lasted 2,000 years, and there is a reason it endures, for it speaks to something we feel when we watch a great fire. That strange, helpless mingling of horror and wonder, the sense of witnessing the end of an age. But turn your eyes from the emperor's tower and look instead at the small and human things. There, in a doorway at the fire's edge, a young man helps an old woman, a stranger, perhaps, to safety, his arm around her shoulders, guiding her slow steps through the smoke. There, a father carries 2 sleeping children, one in each arm, walking steady and calm, so as not to wake them, so they will not be afraid. There, by a fountain, people share water and help one another and do the small, brave, ordinary things that people have always done in the worst of times. For this, too, is what the fire reveals. Not only how things end, but how people, even in the ending, reach out for one another in the dark. And now, let your gaze move down and in, among the streets, for somewhere down there are the people you walked among tonight. When the city was whole, let us find them one last time and see how they meet this night. Down by the river, where the warehouses stand, Vibia the flower seller is awake and watching. Her husband's boat came in safe with the tide hours ago, before the worst of it, and now the 2 of them stand together at the river's edge, his arm around her, watching the great glow spread across the southern sky. They are far enough from the flames, here by the water. They are safe for now. But Vibia thinks of her little stall, her baskets, the corner where she sold her violets and her roses, somewhere over there beneath that rolling smoke. Such a small thing, in the face of so much. She does not weep. She only watches and leans into her husband and is grateful, in the deep way that fear teaches us, simply to have him there beside her in the dark. Somewhere in the crowded lanes, Lucius, the warehouse worker, whom you watched eat his evening meal while his children slept, is awake now and moving. The fire has not reached his quarter, not yet, but the word has come, and he is not a man to wait and hope. You see him gather his 2 small children from their bed, still half asleep and bewildered. You see Marcia, his wife, wrap their few precious things in a blanket. You see them step out together into the smoky street, joining the slow river of families moving north, away from the flames, toward the open ground beyond the city. Lucius carries his youngest on his shoulders. He keeps his voice low and easy, telling the children it is an adventure, a journey, nothing to fear, and his steadiness wraps around them like a cloak, so that they are not afraid, because their father is not afraid, or because he will not let them see that he is. And in the Subura, the old woman on her stool, the keeper of her small corner of the eternal city, has risen at last. Her neighbors are leaving, streaming past in the dark, and a young man, the son of a family she has known for 30 years, stops to take her arm, to help her go with them. For a moment she resists. This has been her doorway, her street, her whole world, for all her long life. To leave it feels like leaving a part of herself behind. But the young man is gentle, and the smoke is thickening. And at last she nods, and takes his arm, and goes, pausing only once, at the corner, to look back at the little lamp still burning above her door, the lamp she has lit every night for longer than the young man has been alive. Then she turns away, into the crowd, and is gone. These are the small stories of the fire, 10,000 of them, 100,000, each one a whole world, each one a life turning on a single night. The histories will remember the emperor, and the great buildings lost, and the districts burned. But they will not remember Vibia, or Lucius, or the old woman of the Subura. And yet it was their city, 2 more truly theirs, perhaps, than it was ever Nero's. And on this night, they did what people have always done. They gathered those they loved, and they helped their neighbors, and they walked together into the dark, and they endured. The men of the night watch, the vigiles, are fighting still. You can see them, here and there along the fire's edge, tiny and desperate and brave, tearing down houses to make their fire breaks, passing their endless buckets, beating at the flames with their vinegar-soaked blankets. They will fight all through the night and into the days that follow. Some of them will not see another dawn. They cannot win, not against a fire like this, not with the wind behind it, but they fight anyway, because it is their work and their city, and there are people still to be saved. And in the saving of even one, there is a kind of victory that no fire can ever take away. The fire will burn for days. Before it is done, it will sweep through great swaths of the city and change the face of Rome forever. But that is all still to come, and it is not for tonight. Tonight, from your quiet hill, you simply watch the great, slow river of light, the rolling smoke, the amber sky, the tiny figures moving far below, and you feel, settling over you, the strange, deep calm that comes from witnessing something vast and ancient and utterly beyond you. The warm wind moves across the hill. The fire glows and breathes in the valley far below. And high above it all, hidden now and then behind the drifting veils of smoke, the old moon still rides the sky, serene and silver and unchanged, as it has through every fire and every night, and every age of the world. You sit down upon the soft grass of the hill, and you watch, and you let your eyes grow heavy. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing to do. There is only the ancient fire, far away and long ago, glowing gently in the dark, and the slow, warm wind, and the turning stars. The night is very deep now, and very quiet, and your eyes are heavy. So, let the hours drift past, gently, the way they do in the soft place between waking and sleep. Let the fire burn low in the valley below. Let the long night turn, slowly, slowly, toward its end. There is nothing you need to watch for now, nothing you need to do. Only rest here, on the soft grass of the hill, beneath the fading stars, and let the world turn quietly around you. The fire far below has begun at last to settle. Through the long hours of the night it raged and rolled, and the people of Rome fought it and fled it and endured it as people do. But all fires, even the greatest, burn themselves down in time. And now, as the deepest part of the night gives way, the great river of flame has broken into scattered pools of glowing embers, dim and red, like the last coals of a hearth at the end of a long evening. The vast columns of smoke have thinned, the terrible amber glow has softened, and a great hush has settled over the city, the deep, exhausted quiet that comes after. In the east, the sky begins to change. You feel it before you see it. That first faint loosening of the dark, that subtle paling at the edge of the world. The stars, one by one, begin to fade. The black of the sky softens to deepest blue, and then to gray, and then, low on the horizon, to the faintest, palest gold. The birds, who have been silent through the long, strange night, begin, here and there, to stir and call. And slowly, gently, as it has every morning since the beginning of the world, the dawn comes to Rome. It is a quiet dawn, and a soft one. The light comes pale and golden through the haze of lingering smoke, and it falls upon a changed city. Whole districts lie blackened and still. Smoke rises in thin grey threads from 1,000 cooling ruins. And yet, and this is the thing that stays with you, the city is still there, battered, wounded, weary beyond words. But there, the great hills still stand. The river still flows, brown and patient, to the sea. The temples on the heights still catch the first gold light of morning. Rome has burned before, and Rome will burn again. And always, always, it has risen from its own ashes. And down in the waking streets, life is already, quietly, beginning again. There, by a fountain at the edge of the burned districts, people gather in the soft dawn, light-tired, smudged with ash, wrapped in whatever they manage to save. They are sharing bread. Someone has brought a basket of it, still warm, from an oven that survived the night, and they pass it hand to hand, and they eat together in the pale morning the way people do. There are quiet words, here and there, even a tired smile. They have lost much. The days ahead will be hard, but they are alive, and the sun is rising, and there is bread to share, and for this morning, in this moment, that is enough. You think, perhaps, Of all the people you walked among through the long night, the woman who ladled stew in the warm glow of her shop, Lucius and his sleeping children, the old priest climbing his temple steps to tend the sacred flame, the baker dozing in the warmth of the baths, Vibia waiting by the river for her husband's boat, the old senator alone in his garden with the firelight in his eyes. You will never know what became of them. They lived and they passed 2,000 years ago, and the earth has long since gathered them home. But on this night, this one long night, you walked among them. You shared their city and their darkness and their dawn. And somehow, across all those centuries, they do not feel so very far away. For this is the secret that the long night reveals, that the people of the past were not so different from you. They were tired at the end of the day. They loved their children. They sat by fountains in the cool of the evening and shared meals in the dark and reached out for one another when the fire came. They wondered at the stars, the same stars you know. And when the long night ended, they rose and shared their bread and began again. The sun climbs higher now, warm and gold and gentle. The last of the smoke drifts away on the morning breeze, and the great city of Rome, eternal and undefeated, breathes in the new day. But you do not need to wake just yet, for you are far away now, drifting in the soft place between the worlds, between the ancient past and the quiet present, between waking and sleep. You can feel the warm grass beneath you growing faint. You can feel the golden morning growing dim and soft. The city and the fire and the dawn, all of it gently fading now, like a dream at the edge of morning, sinking softly down into the deep, still waters of sleep. Let it go. Let all of it go. The journey is over, and you are safe, and there is nothing left to do but rest. Sleep now. Sleep deeply and well. The ancient world will keep, and the stars will turn, and the long night will hold you gently until the morning comes. Rest now and sleep. You have wandered far tonight, through the streets of ancient Rome, through the warm dark and the firelight and the quiet dawn. And now there is nowhere left to go but down into sleep. So let your breathing slow. Let your body grow heavy and warm. Let the last images drift away like smoke on the morning wind. The lantern is dimming now. The journey is done. Whenever you are ready, on another quiet night, the lantern will be lit again, and there will be another world to wander while you sleep. But for now, rest, sleep deeply, sleep well. Good night.